Tractate Bava Batra, page 86. Today, before we go to our materials, I would like to spend some time of introduction because we need to have several concepts deep in our mind before we go to the sugya. First and foremost, we're going to talk a little bit about banking business. There's a concept that even in the modern world that people misconstrue. They think a bank is, some people feel that bank is my enemy or bank out there just to take advantage. Banking business in short is obviously to make the profit, meaning to be out there to get the interest. But banking business in the general structure is to help, meaning to help people to improve the world, to make businesses. The only thing is, bank need to have 2 to 3 assurances before they do business with clients. Number one, they want to assure themselves that there is a collateral. So for example, if it's a real estate, the banks need to make sure that the loan the client asks for is basically protected by their capability to go and do a collateral if needed of the estate. But again, banking business is not to do collateral. Banking business is not to go after bankruptcies and sell real estate. Banking business is to make money over their money. Number two is the idea that the client, the customer, is capable to pay their interest, because as we said, the key point is to make money over their money, which is to have the interest over their money. With that said, in a banking structure, it's not the owner of the bank, it's a special person or persons that's called the underwriter, who collect all the files and make the decision accordingly if the person can get along and stand behind the payments or not. Again, the bank doesn't care if a person makes the minimum payment or pay more than the minimum payment, as long as they get their interest. So their basically decision before giving a loan to individual is based upon one collateral. For example, if the estate is let's say 500,000 and a person's planning to put down payment 100,000, so they want to see their appraisal with the value of the property. So if needed, meaning the person is behind payment, they have no other choice but to go for an auction to sell off the property with all their expenses, they want to make sure that they get the principal that he puts in. And obviously the credit of a person, the credit history, and more, his capability, her capability, or his capability of income, and that basically assurance for them to get the loan. So in short, bank's there to help, and the bank doesn't mind to give you as much as you need the money, as long as they have the assurance. Soon you see the connection to our sugya, but I would like to go to the next subject, which is the idea of, in Judaism, when you have two different concepts of punishment, you impose the heavy one and you release the light one. It's called in the Talmudic language, in Aramaic, kimlei b'derabba minei, meaning if you have a person that committed 2 different transgression or violation, such as he, let's say, stole a purse on Shabbat. So you have here 2 separate violations. You have the violation against a fellow human being by stealing the purse. You have the other violation, which is the violation of Shabbat, which is the 39 type of violation. So since you impose the capital punishment for the violation of Shabbat, you free the person from stealing an item. But again, with that, we go to the third concept, which is called darkei kinyanim, meaning when a person wants to do acquisition, let's say 2 partners or 2 purchaser and the seller, calls them name, Reuven and Shimon. So when Reuven selling a product to Shimon, Reuven agree upon selling certain product to Shimon, Shimon agree upon purchasing certain product from Reuven. That's good. But what exactly the transactions take place? So trace a situation, you walk in the store, let's say a jewelry store, and you're buying a expensive, let's say Rolex, a watch, and you agreed to pay 5,000 and the other party agreed to sell it to you for 5,000. So you basically gave the guy a 5,000 cash, and meanwhile you said, let me go around the store. And another customer comes in and he offers 7,000. The guy allowed to go ahead and sell it to the other customer or not? By the Talmudic law, there is a concept called hagbaha, which means the person, you see it when we're selling chometz, the person lift up the item. By lifting or pulling the item, you basically make the fact of transaction between two parties, and by doing so, you basically acquire it. So hypothetically speaking, if you pay for the item, but you didn't pull it, you didn't lift it, you didn't take it to your possessions, the owner, the seller, still have the right to sell it and just give you back the money that you are planning, hypothetically speaking. So we need to understand three different concepts which we're going to deal today. One, the concept of selling in a state, movable and not movable property, and consequential order. We need to understand the second concept, which is when you have two different punishment, how and when you impose both, or you impose the heavy one and you free the light one. The third, which is the key concept, how exactly you make transactions between two parties if the transactions is involved with something that it's obstructive. Let's say, can you sell an elephant? You cannot lift it up. So how exactly you sell it? How you sell a product that it's not visible? And you see how it's connected all to our sugya, which is, as we said, this is the Tractate Bava Batra, page 86. We are 14 lines from the top of the page. Tnan Hatam, this is the source in Tractate Kiddushin, page 26. נכסים שיש להם אחריות, נקנים בכסף ובשטר ובחזקה. When we speak about a state or property that is guaranteed, obviously we talk about land. Buying a land, selling a land, the Rashbam explained to us, is the estate is not moved, it's a land. When you're getting something that is not moved, the way you acquire it, by the Talmudic concept, there are three different ways. One, obviously, you pay cash, or you pay a valuable of it as a cash, like a currency, and you purchase it. That's one way. There is a second way that it's called shtar. Shtar, it can be a promissory note, or another way is what you call in more modern world, the letter of credit. For those who are not familiar, again, it's an original Jewish invention by the Sephardic, the Spanish Jews in Spain in those days. They used to buy from China and other places. When you have a manufacturer that have a product and a lot of employee to pay, so his bank, let's use country so it will be clear for us. Many people does business with China, so let's say the Chinese paid for their employee average about $15 a week, but they have who knows how many tens of thousands employees. So you order 1 million small boxes, okay, and the product worth, let's say, about a couple of $100,000 to $500,000 product, and it takes them about a month to manufacture it. So the head of that company in China needs to have assurance from his bank, so when he produces the payment for his employees, the money is available to pay his employees. So his bank requires you bank here in the United States to provide which called letter of credit, which means you bank give a green line by writing a document that document is basically a commitment from your account, from your business account here, can be incorporation or LLC, but basically you have the availability and you have the commitment, which call in a modern world letter of credit from you bank, assure the manufacturer that go ahead and make it happen. Obviously there are three different ways to do the letter of credit, so you see how it's connected to us. Either you do it by your representative or watch the product when they are out of that company and approves it, and then you give a green line to you bank here in the United States to pay the bank in China or anywhere in the world, and then the bank in China provided the payment for the employees. Or when it was shipped here overseas, and a representative get it in the port and open it and is satisfied, or when it's come to you company. Obviously the payments is different, and the question is who is carry the whole shipment, which is another subject. But the whole concept of letter of credit is a promissory note from one lending institution to another that commit themselves to certain payment, so the other party will be able to follow up in a sense of making the deal happen. And in that sense, it makes no difference if the commitment is at $10,000 or $10 million or more, as long as you have the letter of credit from a bank that it's basically a commitment for them to go ahead and hire people to do a job. So here, when we talk about the estate, the Gemara said, and to me it's always amazing how 1700 years ago the rabbis understand this concept, that property that is guaranteed, which is land, is acquired by means of money or by means of bill. And the bill can be, for example, a letter of credit from one institution that said, I'm taking this promissory note and purchase it. It can be also by regular documentation, which you call in modern days a check, or other bank's commitment. And the third one is called b'chazaka. Chazaka in general, by the Talmudic concept, is transferring ownership by taking possession. So imagine those days it wasn't a regular manner of registration. In Israel they call it tabu. Regular manner of registration. So Reuven purchased a estate from Shimon by putting a locker on that estate, by changing the fences, or by making something that makes a difference. He built a fence around the estate. Reuven, the buyer, bought the estate from Shimon, and now he built a fence around that estate and put a new lock around that estate. That's basically make chazaka, make him the new owner of that estate. So with that said, if you have a different type of property, here we're talking about without guarantee. Without guarantee is a property that it's a movable object. Movable object, the way that you possess it, and niknin ela bimshicha, the way that you purchase it, it's basically mean of pulling. Pulling, there are different levels. The highest level is called hagbaha. Hagbaha meaning you take the product and you lift it up. We do it when we're selling the chametz. That's the best. But there is other situation that the person just need to pull. If it's animal or things like that, he can pull. There is a beautiful Or Sameach. Or Sameach was one of the greatest sages in the previous generation. He said when it's come to hagbaha, when it's come to lifting an estate, you do not need to physically lift it up. So for example, as we said, if you have an animal, so you put chavilei zradim, you put certain wood part, and you call the animal, and the animal go up on those pieces. Or if you have a chick in the big lul, in the big chick house, and you move them out of that place, by causing that animal to move, that's basically indirect kinyan hagbaha, and according to his view, he doesn't need to have the peulat ha'hagbaha, the lifting physically. But anyway, so they said here, you have different school of thought. Just again, a little bit historical concept. The Jewish people, when they left Israel, upon the destruction of the first temple in 586 BCE, they mainly in Babylon. So when they are in Babylon, there are three different centers of Jewish learning. For American crowd, in a way, it's like, imagine you have a center of learning in Lakewood, New Jersey, which the late Rabbi Kotler built. You have a certain learning in New York that late Rabbi Feinstein built, and you have center of learning in Los Angeles. So in that sense, each center of learning have usually a spiritual leader that gives the direction, and obviously the text is the same, but the framework and understanding sometimes have some differences. So when you go backward to the time of Babylon, it was three different cities that they teach and have the Talmudic Institute. One it's called Sura, don't mix it with Syria. Sura, it's a name of a place in Babylon. Another big place of learning was called Pumbedita, name of a city that have a lot of religious institutions that study Talmud. And the other one is called Nahardea, this name of three cities. Each of them have a big scholar that was leading the center of learning. So here we derive understanding of these rules for several places. Besura matnula lahashmata mishmei de Rav Chizda. So here in a city of Surah, which is a center of learning, they follow halacha according to Rav Chizda. Soon you see how Rav Chizda take it. בפומפדיטה מתנו לה משמי דרב כהנא. In the city of Pompedita, they followed the instruction of Rav Kahana. ואמרי לה משמי דרבה, and there are those who said דרבה, said לא שנו אלא דברים שאין דרכם להרביע. When you talk about movable property, that you purchase it, store pulling, that you're talking about those property that the usual manner of purchase there is to lift it up. For example, a heavy load materials. אבל דברים שדרכם להגביה, however, a light item that it's typically easy to lift them. So he said, בהגבהה אין במשיכה לא. If acquired by lifting, that's basically legal and the matter of transactions is effective. However, if it's just pulling, it's not going to take effect. The Shita Mekubetzet elaborate, we just give the basic understanding. Yativ Abaye v'ka'amar leishma'ata. So Abaye, which is one of the leader, he just sits in the Beit HaMidrash and he repeats this statement that in order to acquire something, it's take effect, meshicha, meaning pulling, is only by item that people usually not lift it up. Eiti v'Rav Ada bar matna la'Abaye, hagonev kis b'Shabbat chayav. Here we try to juxtapose from other subject, and soon you see the mechanism between the two. If a fellow is a thief, unfortunately there are people like that, so on Shabbat he went ahead, he saw a big purse containing a lot of cash, and he decided to steal it. So there are two issues, each of them as a separate entity in a sense of understanding the law. One is the matter of stealing, the other one is matter on doing it on Shabbat. So on Shabbat we have the 39 concept of melachot, 39 type of work that prohibited. So one of them is, as Mishnah in Shabbat 73 tells us, is pulling from private domain to public domain and vice versa, or within the public domain extending for cubits. So when a person does that, he's basically in violation of Shabbat. But before we go to the violation of Shabbat, as we said, we have the violation of stealing an entity from one person to another. Now, since we have the kimle bedraba minei, meaning if you impose capital punishment upon the criminal, so you free him from the monetary payment. So hypothetically speaking, if a person went ahead and he burned a house of his fellow, or burned an estate of his fellow on Shabbat, since you impose on him, depend on the case, for example, stealing, carrying from one domain to another is a skila, but whatever it is a capital punishment, you free him from the payment. Here is a case that we also impose upon him the payment. Why is that? Because you have the argument that by lifting it, you basically acquire, and here we need again to digress to understand the mindset. By halacha, which also the secular law, if someone steals something from someone, he is basically the responsible party for that item. Meaning, hypothetically speaking, if Reuven took from Shimon a car, and he drove the car and he created an accident, or he was involved in any form of accident, obviously he is responsible for the car. So here was a real case scenario that one asked the rabbi. A fellow stole a car, and the car didn't operate properly, so he gave it to a car mechanic. And the car mechanic spent, let's say, $1,000 fixing it. And then the police was after him, so he ran away, or they jailed him, and now the owner get to the car mechanic, and the car mechanic said, I released the car if you give me the $1,000, and the owner said, I did not bring you the car, what do you want from me? And the car mechanic said, what do you expect me to do? Someone came with your car and I did the work, so I want to get paid for my work. So basically, as we said, in the general mindset, when you have someone who's taking something from someone else, regardless if it was in a consent or without the consent, if it's a total thief or not, the moment you take, in a sense, you are the owner. You take the possession of that, and basically you are a responsible party for what happened to that item. So with that said, if someone stole a purse on Shabbat and he basically lifted up the purse, so the moment he lifted up, he basically already did the violation of taking a possession from someone without his consent and have it his. And then he did it on Shabbat, so that's another punishment. So you have these two, and he said that שכבר נתחייב בגנבה קודם שיבוא לידי איסור שבת, because he is already responsible for stealing before we go to the next violation, which is does something like that on Shabbat. So how you did it? This thief was a fellow that come to Daf Yomi's class, so he know the rules. So what did he do? היה מגרר ויוצא, מגרר ויוצא. So what did he do instead, to make sure that it's not an issue, he just drag and move it in existing and drag it in such a way. So by dragging it, he's not lifting it. So he's not lifting it, פטור שהרי איסור שבת וגנבה באים כאחד. That if you have the violation of Shabbat and the violation of stealing come together, but he didn't do the kinyan agbaha, he didn't lift up the item, he drag it. So therefore, he's in a way free from paying it because he have already the capital punishment. והרי כיס דבר הגבהה הוא ואפילו אחי קנה במשיכה. So he said, but here, when we talk about the purse, is an item that can be lifted. And even so, it apparent from the Braita that one acquires it by means of pulling. So how then can it be stated that the items are typically lifted, are not acquired by pulling? So they explain, Amarli, so Abaye respond to Rav Matnan, said, Bemitna. You have to say that he used a rope. Hana, namin bitna ka'amina. So he said, Amarlei b'mide de ba'emitna. So here we talk about very large a rope. So it is a purse that is so large that it cannot be lifted and must be pulled, and therefore is acquired by means of pulling. So again, we understand here that there are several forms of acquisition, and we go to the next step, which is tashma, ברשות מוכר לו קנה עד שיגביהנה, או עד שיעציינה מרשותו. Here we bring a braita, when you have the merchandise that is domain of the seller, so the buyer does not acquire the merchandise until it lifted or until he removes it from the domain of the seller. So I'm using it to just get the springboard of the mindset. If you go to a store and buying a Rolex and you pay cash and the seller decided that he doesn't want to sell it to you, either because you have a better customer or another customer come and bought it, and he said, here is your money, take it back, goodbye. So basically, by halakha, if you didn't lift it up, you didn't really take it to your possession, so it's not yours yet, even you put the money to his pocket. Al ma'amid דבר הגבהה, או באי בהגבהה כנלי, ובאי במשיכה כנלי. So something that you get used to lifted, you have a problem with a lower level of acquisition, which is pulling. אמר רב נחמן בר יצחק, לצדדים תני. You speak about rare case, the way that he do it in a way that they, it's a two different options. It's like disjunctively, which means that when they use the term that he need to lift it up until he pull it out from one domain to another, it's talk about two different situations, which is mided דבר בהגבהה בהגבהה, mided דבר במשיכה במשיכה, which means if you talk about acquired by lifting, it's an item that can be lifted, or if you talk about pulling, so it can be pulled, he acquires it by pulling. So as we said again, the Osameach, the best way is to lift it. If you cannot lift it, there are other ways that you can acquire, such as pulling. But sometimes lifted, an item is not necessarily physically lifted, it can be under the category of agbaha, of lifting, even you're not physically lifting it. Turn the page to 86b. תשמע, המוכר פירות לחברו, משך ולא מדד. So here we bring for something that we're going to learn, that we learn once in the 84b, but we're going also to learn in the future. Here we talk about a fellow that sell a produce. If the buyer pulled the produce but did not measure it, he's acquired it. Now, here we need to understand something. You remember the story of the Rolex? So it's not just that. I have sometimes a process of purchasing, which is you have the produce and you have the measurement. For example, one entity comes, he brings his utensil and he gives it to another entity and he put in his product and then he take that product and weighted. So it's all process. So we ask a question, for example, when it comes to produce, usually you purchase them by lifting it up. So here we see a situation that he doesn't use the kinyan hagbaha, the matter of acquisition by lifting it, but only pulling kinyan mishicha, v'katane dekane b'mshicha. So which is a challenge to what we said previously. Previously what we said if you have something that the manner of which people purchase is by lifting it up, so it cannot be purchased by pulling. Here you see a case as a produce that the person can pull something like produce, even he can lift it, and it's still a matter of acquisition that is legal. So they said, Hacha b'maya skinan b'shlifei rav revei. So here you talk about a large bundles that are pulled from place to place and are not carried. Why? Because they have a large size. So they have a large size, it's very hard to lift them up. I would like now to read a little quicker and then we explain it. So the Gemara challenge said, יחי עם הסעיפה, לוקח פשטן בחברו לא קנת שיתתלנו ממקום זה למקום אחר. עטו פשטן בשליפי רב רבי מלא עבדי, שנת פשטן דמשתמט. Here we use the case of flax. So how people usually use the flax? So a person used it in those days when they bought it, they lifted it up. So they said here when they have the large bundles, so you can argue, and he said that when it's come to flax, is not packed in the large bundles, and because otherwise it will slip from its place. So you have to put it in a very small bundles, and therefore flax is acquired specifically for lifting. Amar leRavin leRava shetashma. Here he brings another case, is a Tractate Kiddushin, page 25b, about purchasing an animal, but here we talk about behema gasa. Behema gasa meaning when you buying a domesticated animal and it's a large domesticated animal, so you go bimsira, you have to passing the animal leash to the buyer. That's the way you make an acquisition those days. V'hadaka behagba'a, when you have an animal that is not domesticated animals, like for example small animal, so you do it by lifting. Divrei Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, Chachamim אומרים בסדר disputed, and they said בהמה דקה במשיכה, that a small not domesticated animal purchased by pulling. ובהמה דקה הגבהה וקטני במשיכה, that's conflicted what we said earlier. So they said shani בהמה דסרחה. Here you have to say that the domesticated animal are different, as they cling to the ground and it is difficult to lift them. So therefore the usual manner of moving animal is to pull them. Now they go to a different subject, but later you see the connection. Rav Shmuel Damrit Ravayu, call, both Rav and Shmuel said, when the seller said to the buyer, I'm selling you a one call, which is like 30 seah in those days, that's the measurement of נפח, ב-30 אני מוכר לך, יכול לחזור בו אפילו בסאה האחרונה. קור ב-30 שאה בסלע אני מוכר לך, ראשון קנה. I like to read it again and then we read the Rambam. תשמע, אם הייתה מידה של אחד מהם ראשון קנה, ואף על גב לא נתמלאה המידה. זאת אומרת, כגון דאמר לי, הין ב-12 סלעים, לוג בסלע אני מוכר לך. וכדאמר רב כהנא, השנתות היו בהין, החנם השנתות היו במידות. So here is the word of Rambam, and the Rambam I'm reading from the Korean edition or the translation of the Rashbam. It's Sefer Kinyan, Hilchot Mechira, chapter 40. You see also in the code in Choshen Mishpat 200 in the comment of the Rama in the Taz. He said, one who sells a specific amount of produce for a set price, that's the Magid Mishneh, and he measured it in a vessel belonging to the seller or buyer that had markings for amount within the vessel. You see, like many vessels, they have a mark on the side. So once the produce reaches a marking, the produce up to the mark is acquired by the buyer, even though the entire measuring vessel are not being lifted. The reason is that each mark on the vessel is considered a measuring vessel by itself. Now, as we said, the Taz and the Rama, we don't have time for that, but in general, the Taz and Rama hold that if the vessel used for measuring belonging to the seller, the buyer acquires the produce only once it's emptied from it. So again, you talk about the produce that you see, vessels that you see a sign outside. But here is another case that challenged what Rav and Shmuel that said that Rishon Kana. Tashma socheret hapoel לעשות עמו לגורן hayom badinar. Someone hire a laborer in the winter or in the spring to work for him in the harvest for 1 dinar. That was the time at that in those days, which means he paying, for example, now in Nisan for each and every day for the 30 days of the harvesting. 87, ולגורן יפה סלע אסור ליהנות ממנו, אבל אם שכרו מהיום בדינר ליום, ולגורן יפה סלע מותר. ויסל כלה תחקור ב30 סאה בסלע, אני מוכר לך, ראשון קנה הכנה מכמה מפסק פסק, ואסור ליהנות ממנו בדינר ליום, ולגורן יפה סלע מותר, המאי והאגר נתר ליהו. So soon we're going to read few halachot and we derive the whole idea of agar netar. So he said, אמר רבא ותסביר על זלזול בסחירות מאסיר, מה ישנה רישא ומה ישנה סיפא. רישא דקלו כעביד בעדי מאשתא מחזקי אגר נתר לי. סיפא דקעביד בעדי מאשתא לא מחזקי אגר נתר לי. ואם היה מחובר לקרקע ודש כלשהו קנה, משום דתלש כלשהו קנה. אז אמר רב ששת, אחא מעסקינן, דאמר לי, לך יפה לך קרקע כלשהו וקנה כל מה שעליה. So here are several halachot and we derive the final halachot from that, and I think it will be better and more beneficial for us. I'm reading from the Korean edition first, the Rashbam, Hilchot Malveh Velovet chapter 7. You see it also in Yoreh De'ah in Shulchan Aruch 176. Hasocheret hapoel. If one hires a laborer, an employee, in the winter to work for him in the summer, pays him in advance. In those days it was a dinar, but makes no sense, we can juxtapose to a currency, 1 dinar a day, and the payment for 1 day's work in the summer is 1 selah, he violates the prohibition of taking interest. If he said to the laborer, work for me from today until such and such a time for 1 dinar a day, and this span of time included the summer, it is permitted as it does not have the appearance of early payment. Now, another halacha, that's the Rashbam Sefer Kinyan Hilchot Mechira chapter 3, you see it also in the Magid Mishnah there. With regard to a field that has a dry flax still attached to the ground, although it was fully ripen, if the owner said to another, clear any amount of the ground and acquire all that is upon it, then once the buyer detaches any amount of the flax, he acquires all of it due to this stipulation. Now, as we said, the Magid Mishnah, and you see it, others explain that he acquires the land, and by means of land he acquires the flax that is attached to the land.
Shula